It is possible and easy to have several different CSS rules all applying to the same element. So this is often advantageous because most CSS properties are orthogonal to one another, meaning they do not interfere with each other. So this gives us freedom to organize the CSS properties in rules in ways that make sense to us developers, knowing that they can compose nicely. So for example, a bit of text can be made italic by one rule, bold by another, and underlined by a third. So we do not have to put all those properties into one place if that is not convenient for us. However, what happens when there are different rules competing to set different values for the same property? So this is where CSS precedence comes into play. So when rendering CSS, the browser has some guidelines it follows for resolving conflicting rules. So here, the following is rough summary in order. So first is that the most specific rule. So a more specific rule takes precedence over a less specific rule. So a rule that more tightly matches a particular element than a general rule will be applied. So here is an example. So in this, both rules are attempting to set span color for a span inside a list item. But in the second rule, so the second rule will win when there is a conflict like color in this case. So because this is the more specific rule. And the second one is the ID selector is the most specific. So rules with an ID selector, like for example, with this hash some ID, are considered more specific than rules without it. Third precedence is that the class selector is more specific than a tag selector. So rules employing a class selector are considered more specific than rules without, but not as specific as an ID selector, which trumps everything. And the fourth, so rules that come later override those that come earlier. So this guideline is for two CSS rule sets with the same selector. So where there are conflicts, the rules from the later one apply. So in this example, an element with the Hortense class will be underlined and its color will be blue because that rule came later than when it was set red. Important. So because multiple CSS selectors can resolve to the same element, and because the rules that govern precedence are complex, you may from time to time encounter a situation where you need to apply a particular CSS property and you want it to take precedence over all others no matter what. So the important will do that. So the exclamation point is required and the whole symbol, important, goes after the value before the semicolon. So this may seem like an attractive option, but using it is not recommended. Once you start to use it, then you'll eventually run into a conflict with the various rules that are using important, and from that conflict there is no escape. So if you are having problems with precedence, the best advice is to fix them directly rather than using this symbol.